when managing your schedule and your bench in OpenAir is to assess the need. In terms of setup, and I'll walk through this on my live screen in just a moment, identify what generic roles are needed. Generic resources can be used while in the planning and pre-sales process, excuse me, prior to named users being identified and assigned to a project. Generic resources will act as that placeholder in report to also determine capacity planning. If you associate planned hours and dates to the tasks with generics, this will allow for visibility into short to long-term staffing needs. And again, the use of bookings in conjunction with the task assignment will allow for greater flexibility and ease in managing resources across projects, which will be discussed further on in the presentation and options for this. So for those of you who might not have the generic setup, these are set up as an administrator in your application and resource settings, and there's an option for generics. So when you set up a generic, you'll set up the generic title, and then you can associate a job code with it. So in this example, I've got a consultant as the consultant job code, but for example, I've got a senior engineer generic, and I have that one tied to a management job code because maybe I've got various generic resources comprising that management job code. So this is where they're set up in the administration module. The task assignment then, pull that one over. Task assignments are, I guess my slides are not advancing here. Let me see. I can get my, okay. And I'm going to send a quick note. It looks like you should see right here defining critical roles and assigning tasks. For one of the folks on my team, I'm wondering if you could just send me a quick note and let me know if you can see the task now. I'm hoping, okay, great. Looks like it's working now. Sorry about that. So again, when assigning the task assignments, looking at here in my project, I've got this in Project ELF set up. In my particular phase, I've got several tasks. And because I'm in very early stages of planning, I don't know who I'm going to actually put on various tasks here. I know I'm going to need a project manager, and I know I'm going to need that project manager for 60 hours between May 2nd and May 5th. Obviously, it's a lot of hours, but looking at the examples there. So again, same thing here for design, build. I've got my generic resources in here, and I'll talk about some of the reports and what those look like. But this is where you would set up the generic folks. Okay. Next up is identifying and executing for your business strategy. So finding that perfect match. There are several ways to look for the perfect match when you're looking for the named user. The first is job code substitution. You can do this both on the bookings view and on the task assignment within the project, and I'm going to show you that in just a moment. So you can look at that there. Another option is a resource, and I put quick in brackets there because you can do a quick or a more comprehensive custom search and search the skill profile database as you have them set up. You can also look at a report for resource utilization, depending on what you're looking at. And again, I'll talk through each of these examples. And lastly, there are resource views on looking at the chart view and the planner view and various items available in there. So with the job code substitution here, as I'm looking, the first thing you would do if you just want to substitute a person on the project at the task assignment level, if you click on the little silhouette icon here, anyone who is tied to that project manager role will come up in this list. And while that's thinking, again, the actual named users will come up. So if I have a consultant, someone who's tagged with a job code of a consultant, they're not going to come up in this list because I need a project manager and the system has been configured so that I'm not going to see anyone who's not that person. So if I say I want to put Andrea on this particular task, I can substitute the resource, get a confirmation, okay, and then Andrea's name, once this page is done refreshing, is going to be, there we go, assigned right here. So simple, straightforward. The other way to substitute via job code is if you're in the bookings module and you want to substitute right in there. I'm going to pull up my open bookings list, and I can click right here on my magnifying glass to do a search. And in this case, I'm looking for a senior engineer. And right now, the only two folks in my environment who I have set up as the job code of management, which correlates to senior engineer, are both Ron and Jody. So if I want to put Ron on this project at a booking level, same process, click on the silhouette icon, I get the confirmation, and then Ron is going to pop up now in my booking instead of the generic. So I've gone ahead and substituted that out. There's also a quick search. So within the resources module up here, underneath search, again, I've got the option for quick and custom. But let's say, just in the interest of time, I'm going to do a quick search. So if I say quick search by coffee flavors, who likes black coffee versus who likes lattes? Personally, I'm a latte person with all the flavorings and sweetener in it, so it's not quite coffee by the time I'm done. If I'm going to do a search by coffee flavors, I can say, okay, I've got Bonnie, who she's a black coffee drinker. Oh, and it looks like Tara is actually, she drinks both lattes and black coffee. She's only been drinking black for 2 to 5 years, and she's an expert at lattes. So these are configured in my skill profile, each of these options. Things like technology, skills, certification, those are all various items that can be searched or can be configured and subsequently searched on in the module. And if I want to do a more complex search, I have that option here with the search and then the custom option as well. So I can filter it down and say I only want people who like lattes, and I only want people who are in the professional services department, for example. There is a resource utilization report, and I'll actually pull that one up at the very end because I'm going to talk about different reporting. That one's very versatile. You can search there, and in addition, you can, underneath your bookings menu, there's a chart and a planner view. The planner view is an internal switch request. If you don't have that currently turned on, the chart is enabled for folks using the bookings. So again, with bookings, with the chart view, you've got various ways to look at the time. If I'm looking here at just a simple booked versus overage, I can see that in this example, my consultant is booked for the week of 4/21, 4/28, and 5/5, and these are the remaining days in the week, what they've got booked. If I were to click on these, I can look and see the detail behind each of these bookings. And the planner view is kind of a combination between the worksheet and that chart view that we were just on. The planner view gives a nice visual depending how you want to see your projects and your booking set up, either by resource or by client. So you can see here, if I'm looking at Ron, these are all of the projects he is booked on, so you can see we keep him quite busy, or we at least did last year since this is 2015 data. And I can see here which projects he's on for any given week. And if I hover my mouse over any of these, there we go, I get a pop-up window that will show me the details between how much he's utilized during what time frame. One nice feature to show you on the planner view is if I do need to move a booking here, that I can say, all right, you know what, he's not going to start this July 5th. He's going to be on vacation. He's going to start this on July 19th that week instead. It's a simple drag and drop, and then that booking has been changed. So you can change it right from the visual. Okay. Scheduling resources effectively. this is where you want to identify who you've got to, what method you're using and who you've got to schedule. So the first method, again, the project team assignment. That is on the Personnel tab, and that is configured in the project stages. I will walk through that in just a moment. And you can also create bookings for generic, which is a bulk swap, and again, another internal switch if that's something you wish to enable. So looking at the project team, if I go back to my particular project, I'm going to leave this page. If I go back to my particular project and I say, underneath my personnel, I had those generics, if you recall, other than Andrea, who I swapped out. I'm going to go to personnel and team. And again, that team option is added in the administration and project stage settings. You can make that visible. If I say, you know what, for my senior engineer, I need to swap out someone else for that. Now I know that it's going to be Jim. He's going to be my senior engineer on this project. And I'm just going to leave the resource allocation and the hours as is. I'm going to check do not increase resource allocation because I've already put a number of planned hours on there. So same thing, and I can swap it out. Jim now will appear on my team, and then when I go back and look at my project, let's look at the outline view. When I go back and look at my project, anywhere I have that senior engineer, it's now been swapped out at the task level for Jim. So Jim, he was on here deployment, and he's also working on design. The other option when working on a project, if you're looking at creating bookings, is to create generic bookings from the task assignment. This requires that you're on the list view within phases and tasks. And again, it's an internal switch. With this button here, it's going to look at any of the generic assignments on here, and it'll give you a confirmation ready to create bookings. Once you say okay, then these bookings are generated and then they'll be put into the appropriate stage. So I have 7 bookings created. Now when I go and look at my bookings, if I look at my list, I have now the additional items. Oops, I just want to look at ones that were requested today. Time created today. I'm going to approve that. Okay, so I've got my project manager, my training specialist. Those were the other 2 generic bookings left. You'll see I didn't have a booking created for Andrea or for Jim because those are not generic users. So again, I can come in here and if I need to now make any bulk updates, another thing I can do is click on the plus sign, make updates here as well. And I can change the resource if I know that I'm going to have Jody be my project manager. I can swap her out there as well. Achieving organizational goals. Moving forward and growing. Through the data that you're putting in and generating, you're able to get a series of reports. Some of the reports that you could look at, especially during times of slow growth and allocating staff to other projects, such as internal projects or company initiatives, using the report to identify available staff is key. So here I've got a few different samples which I'll actually show you in the environment. So the first one here is the resource utilization report. I talked about this report back in the first slide, and this particular report, how it's configured, you can do it by hours, you can do it by percent utilized. Right now I've got it set up by percent utilized. I have color coding set up to say if someone's utilized 0 to 89%, color them in blue for that week, 90 to 110%, good, we'll leave them green. Anything over 110%, we're going to start to get a little leery of it and take note of that. So if I look at my generic consultant here, this is where I can have that forecast into who I'm going to be meeting on my project and when, because I've assigned dates to that generic consultant, and I can say, okay, that consultant is assigned on both the assigned to Project ELF and to PSA deployment and release management. So they're on a few different projects there. They're on Project ELF quite a bit. Not that 233% is realistic. However, assuming we're looking at a little bit better numbers here, say 102% the week of May 8th, then saying, okay, what resources do I have? Who are available that week? And since I've got all this blue, it looks like pretty much everyone in my organization is available that week to jump on this particular project. One of the key things with this report, again, it's your forward planning. It's looking at those upcoming bookings or lack thereof, indicating potential availability. And I say potential is because I want to ensure that all of the staff are following your process as defined when you've set up this report, and that bookings are being created and that users are not being pulled onto work outside of OpenAir. Another report that I've got set up is the employee non-billable hours. This is similar to the report I just looked at. I don't have the color coding set up on this report, but this report will show me non-billable hours, and I'm looking at it from a historical standpoint. So I can analyze and determine where users are logging their hours based on the task type that is configured on each task. Task types, for those of you using those, are set up as things like billable, non-billable, internal, sales, maybe even things like approved investment or productive utilization, where it's a non-billable task, but you're going to give someone utilization credit for that. So if I look at this example, I can see here that Andrea has been logging some non-billable time. Not a ton, but she's been logging some time. She did some in October. She did some back, her total was 8.5 hours, and she was working on the release evaluation project, and the task was the October 17th release. That was an improved investment. Jim, I can see here, has been working on sales, and he only worked an hour back in November. So he hasn't been working a ton. But you can see here, too, if people have high numbers, high amount of time in administrative tasks or areas where they're not necessarily best utilized, looking at areas where you could potentially retrain staff and cross-train them. So Jim, I say, you know what, he's not getting a whole lot of, or he's getting a lot of non-billable time in, for example, and I'd rather him fill in some of my higher needs where I'm actually going to be billing clients. I can set up a report, and this report is contingent on the resource demand request being used. Again, it's an internal switch and configuration, but this is where specific users can submit a request for a type of resource. So here I can see that I have a lot of requests for various people. Here I've got a request for someone who reads and speaks fluent French. Here I've got a request for a latte. I've got a latte here and a latte here. So looking at these, saying, okay, you know what, maybe I need to cross-train Jim on the process of how to make or drink a latte, and I can relieve some of my other staff who I'm going to be assigning to this. In this example, I can see that each of these projects were all scheduled to start on January 1st, and the anticipated hours associated with each of those projects. So I get a sense of my backlog, and again, comparing that non-billable time to this resource demand request report where I can look to fill in actual needs. So in summary, assess your organizational needs, starting to take inventory of where you feel like your gaps are, where are you hurting, where do you feel like you really could use more information and more depth. Plan and configure the resource module. A lot of these configurations are within the resource module. There's some within the project module as well. So planning and configuring this data once you've identified those needs to support the process. Then implementing the process to support scalability, making sure that you've got a process that you can grow with for a set period of time until you need to take a step back or pause and reevaluate and make any potential changes. And lastly, and I don't want to say most importantly, but obviously reports drive a lot of the data, is evaluating. And again, cannot stress reports enough. With the data gathered, you can take action on opportunities for growth, staff development, and organizational change and improvement.